BS.
Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. We're joined on the line by Thomas Jipping. He's Deputy Director and Senior Legal Fellow of the Edwin Meese III Center for Legal and Judicial Studies, part of the Institute for Constitutional Government at the Heritage Foundation. Thomas, good to talk to you, sir.
Thanks for having me back.
So why don't we discuss the latest in this impeachment trial? So far, it just seems like the two sides yelling at each other about impeachment rules that basically are standard and normal. It's going to be 24 hours for each side. It used to be 2 days apiece. Now it's 3 days apiece so that the senators can go home and apparently get drunk as humanly possible as per their usual routine. And then we get to the question as to which documents will actually be admitted and which witnesses will be admitted. And they'll vote on all of that afterward. I don't see why exactly any of this is panic-worthy.
Well, it's not necessarily, except that there's a jostling back and forth about which side really has the most control over the impeachment trial. And, of course, the amendments, quote-unquote, that Senator Schumer offered yesterday to the rules resolution really show what the Democrats' strategy is, and that is they have chosen this issue of additional witnesses and documents as the hill on which, they're going to fall on their sword, and so they're going to use every opportunity in jostling about these rules and in forcing the Senate to take votes on different things to make the Senate, make the Republicans vote on whether to have additional witnesses or documents. That's their strategy, and so that's really what the wrangling about the resolution and all of the votes on the amendments was about.
Now, once the two sides have made their initial arguments, aren't those things going to come up for a vote anyway? I mean, I assume that there will be talk about subpoenaing after all of this. I mean, this is what Senator Romney was suggesting yesterday.
Yeah, that's why Majority Leader Mitch McConnell moved to table each one of Schumer's amendments. His amendments really weren't about the resolution, tweaking the rules or adjusting this or that. His amendments were trying to front-load the process by already committing the Senate to calling specific witnesses or to subpoenaing specific documents. And McConnell said, look, the underlying resolution provides for that. It provides for it at about mid-trial, the same place that the Clinton impeachment trial did. And so there's no, we should put aside this effort to commit the Senate to this even before the trial begins. So yeah, after the presentation of both sides, after the senators have an opportunity to ask questions, then there will be opportunity to raise these issues. The Senate will decide whether to subpoena witnesses, whether to subpoena documents, and if so, which ones.
So, watching this thing move forward, Thomas Jipping, Deputy Director and Senior Legal Fellow over at the Heritage Foundation, do you think that more witnesses are going to be called? I mean, there are certainly many senators who are opposed, but really this whole thing relies on maybe 4 Republican senators. So Democrats are hoping that Romney, Murkowski, and Collins all vote in favor of additional witnesses. What do you think is the probability that additional witnesses are called?
I think it's a closer call today than it was even a couple of weeks ago, and I say that only because it's clear that Democrats are relentless in pushing this issue, wanting to make people believe that unless unless Mick Mulvaney and John Bolton are called to testify in the Senate impeachment trial, it's not a fair trial, which of course isn't true, but they've really chosen that as the way to frame their attack. And there are maybe a few Republicans who say, what's the harm in having a few more witnesses called, since these witnesses did not appear in the House. So I still don't think on balance it's going to happen, but I think it's a closer call now than it was maybe just a few weeks ago.
Now, the witness that the Democrats are obviously focusing on here is John Bolton. They're suggesting that the former National Security Advisor will testify and that he will breach executive privilege in doing so. I find that hard to believe. I think it's very difficult to believe that Bolton is going to get up and say anything different than confirming what Fiona Hill, his deputy, has already testified to in front of the House. If Bolton were to be called, do you think that there would be any real bombshell, or would it just be kind of more of the same that his aides were telling about?
Well, I've had the same feeling that you just described, which is, there seems to be a lot of eggs in that basket, and Bolton has said from the beginning, if I'm subpoenaed, I will testify, but it's not clear to me exactly what he would testify to. It's also important to put this in perspective, where the Senate or the House did subpoena John Bolton and his deputy to testify on instructions from the president. They declined. But then the House did not enforce their subpoena. The proper process here, if the House really wanted them to testify and thought that their testimony was critical, they would have gone to court to enforce the subpoena. Not only that, it was Bolton that went to court and said, do I have to do this? And when Adam Schiff got wind that he was actually inquiring of a court, Adam Schiff pulled the subpoena altogether. So the House has actually said by their actions, and actions speak louder than words even in politics, that these witnesses may not be all that important as we've been led to believe. So I don't know that John Bolton is necessarily the smoking gun the Democrats think he is.
Tom Jipping from the Heritage Foundation. Really appreciate your time, sir, and we'll definitely check back in as this thing progresses.
Okay, glad to do it. Thanks.
Coming up.